In Lewis Carroll's classic book, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, the caterpillar started his conversation with Alice with a question. Who are you? To which she admitted, I hardly know, sir, just at present. At least I know who I was when I got up this morning, but I think I must have been changed several times since then. Kudos to Alice for even trying to answer that question. We are many people, often thinking and behaving differently in many differing situations. And who we think we are may be completely different than how other people view us. Who we think we are is what is usually referred to as our self-concept, which also goes by different terms, such as self-construction, self-identity, self-perspective, self-structure, and self-image. Essentially, it's the answer you have to the caterpillar's question. Who are you? It's the collection of beliefs that you have about yourself. Yes, I use the word different many times, so I'll use it again. What is the difference between self-concept and self-esteem? That's what this video will focus on, what self-concept is, what self-esteem is, and how it differs from the self-concept. Both humanist psychologists Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow were involved in describing the self-concept, which, as I said earlier, is the view you have of yourself. Think of it as a non-judgmental description of yourself. While it can change over time, it's a relatively stable perception. It can refer to physical attributes, social roles, personal traits, and existential views which are much more abstract. For example, physically, I'm short, overweight, female. Wait, that should be gray hair these days. In terms of social roles, I am a professor, a daughter, a friend, colleague. Again, the hair should be gray in this picture. In terms of personal traits, I consider myself intelligent, altruistic, cheerful, a good cook, a multitasker, and existentially, I view myself as a product of my surroundings and an integral part of the world around us. Now, admittedly, I'm not always a good cook, but I am for the most part. And while I have not been a professor my entire life, I think of myself as a professor now and probably will even after I am no longer teaching, probably considering myself as a retired professor. Another way to think of the self-concept is that it is an enduring sense of who we are. Let me use the Spanish verb to be as an example to clarify the self-concept. In English, we would use the words I am, she is, and they are, all meaning to be. But unlike English, there are actually two different Spanish versions of this verb, ser and estar. For our purposes, ser relates to the self-concept. I am, and will be for the foreseeable future, a daughter. Estar is usually used to express emotion. I am happy, sad, etc. Yes, I know it also means location, etc., but that's not where I'm going with this. But what about those of us who are described as perpetually happy, grumpy, frustrated, etc.? In that case, ser would be the verb used, with estar used to describe a deviation from the norm. She is sad, using estar, because she is normally happy, using ser. Your self-concept, then, is your ser. Yo soy una hija. I am a daughter. Or yo soy alegre. I am cheerful, happy, etc. That brings us to self-esteem, sometimes called self-worth. No, our self-esteem is not the estar version of to be. Instead, our self-esteem moves beyond just reporting the information to conveying how we feel about these things. Technically, it is an evaluation, a judgment of who we are, referring to how much we like, accept, or approve of ourselves. We can often hear how you feel about yourself through the way you enhance, clarify, or diminish the labels you use to describe yourself. For example, I said I was a professor. How do I feel about that? Perhaps I'm proud to be a professor. It enhances my self-esteem. Or perhaps I view a professor as less than. Maybe I compare my occupation with those of my friends and family, who might be engineers, famous actors, politicians, and so on, and have an unfavorable view of my profession. For the record, I feel good about being a professor. Another example I used was that I am overweight. I constantly compare myself to others, and I don't feel good about this aspect of myself, which negatively affects my self-esteem. You can probably hear that negativity in the way I said that word, overweight. The word itself is a description. My tone of voice communicates my feelings about being overweight. Earlier, I mentioned Abraham Maslow. If you are familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you'll recall that even he addressed the importance of feeling good about ourselves when he placed esteem needs near the very top of his hierarchy. If you're having difficulty with the difference between self-concept and self-esteem, you're not alone. Your self-concept influences your self-esteem, and vice versa. In fact, psychologist Carl Rogers included self-esteem as one of the three components of the self, sometimes called personality theory, when he defined it as a combination of our self-image, our personal view of who we are, our ideal self, who we wish we really were, and our self-esteem or self-worth, how much value we place on ourselves. See, you might be saying, self-esteem is right in Rogers' description of the self-concept. True, but I and others would argue that the self-concept, as we are talking about it, refers to that first component of self-image, our personal view of who we are. Rogers also introduced the concept of congruence, relating to the overlap of the self-image and the ideal self. The closer our ideal self is to our self-image, the more congruence we experience. The more congruence, the greater our sense of self-esteem. We feel good about ourselves and our lives. Little or no overlap between our self-image and our ideal self means we are in an incongruent state. Our self-image and ideal self differ significantly, contributing to low self-esteem. And according to several medical studies, low self-esteem can negatively affect your health as well as your personal and work relationships. Now that you have a better idea of both the self-concept and self-esteem, you are probably wondering how to improve your self-esteem. While that's beyond the scope of this video, suffice it to say that the process involves a lot of introspection and realistic thinking. To repeat the caterpillar's question, who are you? Keep in mind that no one really knows who someone truly is. No matter how accurate you think your self-concept is, I can pretty much guarantee that you are off in at least one aspect: your physical appearance. Don't believe me? Think of your reaction when you see a photograph of yourself. You just don't look right. That's because not only does the camera add weight, ugh, and that can affect your self-esteem, but you see your image in reverse. You're used to seeing yourself in a mirror with your hair parted on, say, the left, but others look at you with your hair part on the right. And if your view of your physical self is erroneous, the other parts of your self-concept may be as well. Yep, that deserves some introspection and realistic thinking.